Whispering Gulch lay buried under white silence. Snow pressed against the saloon doors, swallowed the fences, and made even the river whisper like a ghost. Out near the ridge, Levi McCrae rode alone through the drifts, coat collar turned high, breath fogging in front of him like smoke from a dying fire. The cattle were penned, the world frozen, and still the ache inside him moved, the old ache that no blizzard could quiet. He rode to check the line shack, though no man could work in that cold. Habit was his only prayer now. The memory of his brother's face, frostbitten, pleading, haunted every gust that scraped across the plains. 2 years, and still Levi woke hearing his name carried off by wind. At dusk, he reached the station. The last train of the season hissed on the tracks, steam curling around the lantern light. Folks huddled close, waiting for parcels or letters before the rails closed to snow. Levi stood at a distance, hat low, just another shape in the whiteness. Then he saw her. A woman in a thin blue dress stepped off the train, no coat, no escort, her gloved hands trembling. She turned one way, then the other, eyes wide at the endless snow. When the wind struck, she staggered. No one moved. Levi did. The whistle wailed, and his boots broke the crusted ice as he crossed the platform toward her, not knowing that one act of warmth would unearth every cold place inside him. The train groaned away into the night, leaving only the sound of her teeth chattering, and his coat opening in the wind. He didn't speak when he draped the coat over her shoulders, just tugged it close until the shivering slowed. The fabric swallowed her thin frame, his scent of leather and pine wrapping around her like a promise no one had asked him to make. Steam rose from the rails, and her breath came quick and frightened. "Where you headed?" he asked quietly. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then, finally, nowhere left. The words hung in the frost like something fragile. He nodded once, as if that answer belonged to him too. The station lamps were dying, and the crowd had gone. Only the stationmaster lingered in the doorway, watching. Levi touched the brim of his hat, guiding her toward the wagon without another word. The snow deepened as they rode. Each hoofbeat vanished into the white world around them. She sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, eyes down. He could see the tremor still in her fingers, so he reached for the reins with one hand and pulled the coat tighter around her with the other. At his cabin, he lit the stove until it crackled. The warmth crawled up slow, filling the silence between them. She stood near the fire, still holding herself small, like a bird that didn't trust its own wings. When he set a tin cup of coffee beside her, their fingers brushed, and for the first time since the train, she looked at him fully. The look wasn't thanks. It was something older, deeper, the recognition of another soul living under the same frost. She took the cup, and he didn't move away. Outside, the wind howled against the cabin walls, but inside, the silence had changed its shape. Days settled into a rhythm quieter than breath. She rose before light, tending the fire, her movements careful but certain, as if keeping busy kept the past from speaking. He'd find her sometimes standing by the window, watching the snow fall in slow sheets, her face soft with something that looked like waiting. Levi spent daylight hours in the barn, mending tack or checking fences that didn't need checking. Yet every time he came back through the door, he'd pause, just long enough to hear the whisper of her skirts, the clink of tin, the small proof that he wasn't alone. They spoke little. Words were like firewood, meant to be used sparingly. Still, small things began to change, her voice humming as she washed tin plates, his gloves left by the stove instead of the door, 2 cups cooling side by side. Once, when she stepped outside to gather snow for water, the hem of her dress caught on the step. He was there before she could fall, steadying her by the waist. The touch was brief, their eyes level, the air between them sharper than the cold. She whispered something, a thank you or maybe a warning, and slipped free. That night, as wind clawed at the shutters, he found her asleep by the fire, the orange light softening her face. The coat he'd given her lay folded neatly beside her chair. He sat across the room, boots by the door, watching the flames rise and fall. Something uncoiled inside him, not comfort, not yet. More like a thaw beginning somewhere deep in the ground, unseen but certain. Outside, the storm had quieted. Inside, the silence held its breath. The thaw came late that year, slow and reluctant. Icicles dripped from the eaves like small ticking clocks, and the snow turned to slush that carried the smell of old smoke and pine. The land was waking, but neither of them spoke of what had changed. They worked side by side, mending, feeding, waiting, as if spring might decide their hearts too. One evening, she lingered by the door, hair undone from the wind. He noticed the tremor in her hands again, the same one she'd had on the platform. She caught him looking and, after a long moment, said softly, "I was meant to marry a man in this territory." He didn't move. He sent letters. Promised me a place. When I stepped off that train, I found out he'd died in a mining accident 3 weeks before I arrived. Her voice faltered. They said his brother buried him himself. Levi turned away. His jaw worked, the muscles tense beneath his skin. "I heard of that," he said. "Didn't know he was the reason you came. I had nowhere else." The silence between them filled like water. The fire popped once, bright as a heartbeat. He crossed the room, slow, and poured her coffee, his hands steady, though something raw moved behind his eyes. "You can stay," he said. "Till the thaw's done." She nodded. "I don't need pity. Then we'll call it company." Outside, the river cracked open, ice giving way to restless current. Inside, their words sank deep, not confession, not promise, just truth, finally spoken. By morning, the thaw had reached the valley floor. The sound of it echoed through the hills like breath returning to a long silent chest. By the time the thaw reached town, the talk had already started. Whispers carried faster than spring melt, about the schoolteacher who'd stepped off a train into a man's coat and never left his cabin. The stationmaster's wife told it one way, Ruthie McCrae another. Every tongue made the tale colder than the truth. Levi heard it first from Silas Trent at the feed store. "You're the talk of Whispering Gulch," Silas said, voice low, eyes steady. "Some say you've taken up with her. Some say worse." Levi didn't answer. Just set his jaw and paid for the grain. But the words followed him out into the street like shadows that wouldn't melt. That evening, he found her on the porch, hair lit gold by the last light. She'd heard too, he could see it in the way she held herself, back straight, chin high. "You should tell them I'm leaving," she said. "Spare yourself." He stood by the rail, the boards creaking under his weight. "And send you where? Back to the cold that near killed you?" Her eyes met his, clear, unflinching. "It's not your name they'll ruin. It's mine." He wanted to say it didn't matter. But he knew it did. Out here, a woman's reputation was the only fence between her and ruin. He reached out, stopped just short of touching her hand. "Let them talk," he said. "I know what's true." From the valley below came the sound of distant thunder, not storm, but hooves, the spring drive returning early. Duty would call him away come dawn. She looked toward the dark horizon, then back at him. "Then I'll wait," she said. "But don't let mercy be the only reason you come back." The wind carried her words out into the dusk, and he felt them settle somewhere too deep to shake. The drive went bad fast. The sky broke open with sleet, and the herd turned wild under it. Levi and the men rode hard through mud that swallowed hooves and hope alike. For 3 days they fought wind and panic, driving the cattle toward higher ground, each mile a test of bone and will. By the 4th night, the storm swallowed the world whole. He could see nothing but the white blur of rain and ghosts of his own making, his brother's face, Clara's eyes, the platform where she'd stood shaking. The past rode beside him, whispering failure in every gust. When lightning split the ridge, one steer broke free, dragging others into a stampede that tore through the valley. Levi spurred his horse after them, the cold cutting like memory. Hooves thundered, mud flew, and somewhere between thunderclaps he heard Silas shout his name, too far to matter. He drove the lead animal toward the bluff, turning them before the drop. The herd swung wide, nearly taking him with it. His horse stumbled, went down, and the world turned black and roaring. When he came to, the storm was still there but quieter, tired. His leg burned, the ground slick beneath him. The cattle were safe. He was not. He looked up at the sky, gray, endless, and thought of the cabin's light, the smell of her coffee, the way she'd said wait. By the time Silas found him, Levi was half buried in mud, gripping his brother's old locket in one hand, the one he'd never worn since the night he'd died. He held it tight now, whispering, "Not again." Far away, in that small cabin against the hill, Clara woke to wind at the door, sharp, insistent, as if the storm itself had come knocking. They brought him home 3 days later, pale, fevered, half-conscious. The storm had broken, but snow still clung to the shadows like the memory of pain. Silas carried him inside, set him by the fire, and left without a word. Some things didn't need saying. Clara worked in silence. Water boiled, bandages tightened, the fire stoked until the cabin glowed with restless light. His face, cut and mud-streaked, looked younger in the flicker. The man the town envied now lay as fragile as the frost melting from the windows. When he stirred, her hand was already there, cool on his forehead, steady as prayer. His eyes opened slowly, unsure if the world was still holding him. "You came back," she whispered. "I said I would." His voice was gravel and breath. "Didn't promise how." Her mouth trembled between laughter and tears. "They'll still talk. Then let 'em. You can't freeze what's already thawed." Outside, the snow dripped steady from the eaves, each drop a soft heartbeat. Inside, the quiet grew warm again, the kind of silence that shelters, not buries. Weeks passed before he could walk to the porch. The hills were green now, the air sweet with thawed earth. She joined him there, shoulder brushing his. Neither spoke. The world didn't need their words to know what had taken root. When a train whistle rose from the valley, she turned toward it, eyes distant. He took her hand, rough, scarred, sure, and she let it stay. The same platform that once held her shivering now lay bathed in spring light, the rails glinting like new promise. The wind moved through the grass in long slow waves, carrying no rumor, no shame, only the sound of two hearts steadying into peace.